episode of The Claus Corner. Today's guest is an entertainer, humorist, author, actor, music aficionado, and promoter. He is most well known for producing the best and the most fun music conventions. Previous guests include Pete Best, Davy Jones, Mickey Dolenz, Tommy James, Tommy Rowe, Richie Havens, Little Anthony, Mary Wilson, Al Jardine, and many, many more. So without further ado, please welcome the Renaissance man himself, Mr. Charles Rosenay, to The Claus Corner.
So glad to be here. Wow, I forgot some of those people. Yeah, we've had them at conventions, and some of them are no longer with us, and some of them became dear friends.
Yeah. Well, if anybody who maybe doesn't believe that, all you have to do is go to your Facebook page. You have a video of you dancing around with Paul McCartney. You know and met everybody. It's so amazing, the things that you've done. We're going to get into all of this, but yeah, I love looking at all the Facebook pictures and all the people. Like, people come to me, oh, where did you met everybody? It's like, no, you don't know Charles. Charles not only met, he knows everybody.
Yeah, well, the difference is, I mean, I published a music magazine for 20 years, produced all these conventions, so I kind of had an in. I was booking a lot of them to appear at my events. Yeah. You get them because, you know, you've got the personality and the charisma, and they just all want to come on your show, right?
That must be it. That's definitely it. Well, you know what? Speaking of writing, I want to start off with what you most recently did. You recently released a book. It's entitled The Book of Top 10 Horror Lists. So tell me, how'd that come about?
You know, so I mentioned that I published a magazine for about 20 years. It was a Beatles magazine called Good Day Sunshine. And when the internet came along, I felt it was a little passé, so we stopped publishing that. But I was doing Beatles Tours to Liverpool. So one was symmetry, one was helping the other. And then I started doing Dracula tours to Transylvania, as you may know. And what I wanted to do is do something similar that could where one could promote the other, but I wasn't going to do a magazine, so I did an online newsletter called National Horror Happenings, and it was cool. I would do, you know, reviews of movies, previews, horror news, monster stuff, and then for some reason I did a top 10 list from a celebrity, and it got the most hits, the most views, the most, you know, likes and all that. So I said, all right, it works, let's try it again. And at that time, with 2010, I had produced RockCon, the weekend of 100 rock stars. So some of the people you mentioned were guests at my show. So I would call, hey, Tommy James, I need a top 10 horror list. All right, sure, Charles, that kind of thing. So I kind of, you know, hooked up with the people who I knew already and said, I need these lists. And every other month we would do a list, and it always got the most views. Well, come fast forward 10 years, and we're at the pandemic. All the things I do, Rich, I DJ parties, I couldn't do. I book bands, I couldn't do. Tours to Liverpool for Beatles fans, couldn't do. Dracula tours, couldn't do. On and on and on. All the things that I could do, I couldn't do. So we'd watch horror movies at home. We'd play Scrabble. Kids would go to sleep at midnight, and I would go on the treadmill, and I would think, what could I do in this time? And I somehow remembered these lists, and I found them on the computer, and I only needed like 10 or 20 more to hit 100. And that was the impetus. I said, if I hit the 100, I'm going to publish a book. I mean, these lists are amazing. You know, William Shatner, Ruth Buzzy, Pete Best, all these cool pop culture rock stars, actors, celebrities. I felt, you know, it was a sin not having it out, you know, for the world to be able to read these great lists. And it's not just lists. It's the reasons why they picked the movies or the books or whatever the horror list they did. And sure enough, got the 100. Bear Manor Media said, yes, it's right up our alley. Great pop culture book. Let's publish it. Took about a year to come out. Came out, you know, a few months back, and it's just been an utter joy because I've gotten to do well. It's got great reviews on Amazon, which is one thing, but I've gotten to appear at conventions. Now, someone like myself who's produced conventions my whole life, or have gone to conventions and asked for other people for their autographs. Here I am now on the other side of the table, actually signing books. This is a joy. This is like, whoa, a revelation in the business. So I'm hooked, and I'm going to do a bunch more books. It's been really a fun, exciting journey to get to this.
Well, it's funny, because I most recently saw you at the Chiller Convention in New Jersey.
Yes.
And I was all set to buy your book. All of a sudden, wah, 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 bomb scare. So I never had a chance to buy your book yet.
Oh,
And
oh,
I was all set. I said, you know what? I'll be right back. Let me go get something from the other room. Came back, and that's when the bomb scare happened, which I didn't want to get into that because it seems like there's something going on with that convention where it happens every year on a Saturday. I'm never going on a Saturday again. But
I
I
think
do love the Chiller Convention.
I think they found the culprit, so hopefully it won't
Oh,
ever
good.
happen again. Yeah, Chiller Convention. I mean, to be on the same guest list as gosh, Rex Smith and who was on that one? So many cool people. Sybil Danning, Kid and Play, two of the Leave It to Beaver kids. You probably remember more of the stars than I do. But to be next to Sarah Karloff, Boris Karloff's daughter, and show her the book and show her that she had a chapter in it, and she'll see she signed a copy from me. So that, you know what I mean? Meeting Beatles was the greatest thing, meeting Paul and George and Ringo, but meeting these monsters who I always grow up loving and their siblings, so special, so amazing.
I did meet Sarah Karloff, and she's going to be on the show sometime in the future. But you know who was great? I met her, and she was on the show. We had a great conversation. Was Victoria Price, Vincent Price's
Yeah,
daughter?
yes, and she's given me a list from the sequel for the next book, for the sequel to this one. And yeah, she's a great writer. She's very special. I think I might have actually I had her email forever, and I wrote originally to Sarah Karloff, Ron Chaney, Bela Lugosi Jr., and Victoria Price, and Sarah Karloff. I don't know. So, and the only one who came through, interestingly enough, was the one who doesn't like monster movies, Sarah Karloff. She said, Charles, I want to help you, but I didn't watch my dad's movies. And so she came up with a top 10 list of things that scare her. And number 10 was having to do this list. Brilliant, right?
I love it. I met her several times, as I mentioned. She seems so quiet, so reserved. And what's hilarious is how much she looks just like Boris. she
Really
definitely could. But yeah, she is a great person, and I cannot wait to have her on the show. But that is funny that because she did mention, she goes, I don't like horror movies at all. Victoria pretty much said the same thing. She said she likes her father's other work more when he was a character actor, and she named a couple movies, and I ended up watching them afterwards. I loved it. I know exactly why she liked them the best.
So I think her top 10 list, and I don't have it in front of me, was my dad's roles that horror fans may not know as well. A top 10 list. And that's brilliant. I love when they do stuff like that, when they think out of the box and they come up with lists that, another example of that is John Lennon's sister, Julia Baird. And I cite this so many times because she did the same thing. Charles, I don't think I've seen more than a few horror movies. I don't like them. I can't write about them, but leave it with me. And a month later, I get this gigantic file. And it's turned out to be the largest chapter in the book, the most well thought out. It looked like a college thesis, and it's the horror elements of literature with a focus on Shakespeare's horror works. And like, who would have thought, So it's those things that, you pick up the book and you think you're going to read, okay, a top 10 from Gloria Gaynor has, the most obvious ones. But then you see another one. It's like, how do these people come up with it? So brilliant themes and well written. And it makes the book pretty special.
I was going to say, I like the fact that they took their time and they put a lot of thought and effort into it instead of like, yeah, Charles, I'll get you something. And they'll just say the first 10 things that come to their mind. So they actually took the time and thought about it. Now for you, what are your favorite horror movies?
Well, The Exorcist will be on the top of my list. Yeah. And when we calculated and added up all the top 10 lists that were in the book, all 100, that one came out first as well. But it's not the only movie. It's the only movie that I remembered being not scared, but wow, I see why this is scary. And I think I'm one of these guys, if I go to a movie and it's a comedy, I'll go, oh, that was funny. And I'll go to my own haunted attraction that I used to run, and I'll walk through and I go, oh, good job. That was a good scare. But I never really get scared. But there was one movie that gave me nightmares. And it's not your typical horror movie. And the question is it even a horror movie? And my answer to that is, well, anything that scares you would fall into that category. But it was a home invasion movie, and it was about a blind gal played by Audrey Hepburn, and the bad guy was Alan Arkin playing Out of Stereotype, and it was a movie called Wait Until Dark. And Rich, I gotta tell you, I remember I saw it as a little kid in the theater, and I remember coming home, going to sleep, and the whole night people were breaking into my house. They were coming through the windows, they were coming through the doors, they were coming under doors. I was one of those sleep coma, half awake, flu-like nights. And of course, I was sleeping and dreaming this, but that's the only movie that ever gave me nightmares, is Wait Until Dark.
Like for me, my father, when I was 7 years old, which was 1975, that's when Jaws came out. So my father used to always say, my brother, I was 7, my brother was 5, my other brother was 4 or 3.5, 4. And he's like, hey, you want to go to school tomorrow? No, you want to go see Jaws with me? We ended up seeing Jaws 17 times in the theater that year. And it was so funny because I went to school the next day and my teacher said, oh, you were out of school. Were you sick? No, my father took me to see Jaws. I told you to lie. He started screaming at me. But you know, I saw that movie. And then after that, my father took us to see Evil Dead. He took us to see all these different horror movies. And every ticket person would say, I don't know if your kids can handle it. My kids can take it. Get them a ticket. So by the time I was 9 or 10 years old, I was so desensitized, which I think was good because
very good.
The only movie that scared me, and you're going to laugh at this one, was Phantasm, the original, 1979. For some reason, the tall man, that's the one I had nightmares about.
Wow. It's funny you brought up Jaws, because when I do book signings, like at libraries, this always happens. They see, on the cover, you've got all the classic monsters, and it's this one right here that people say, well, is it a horror movie? And we're talking about King Kong. And my answer is, well, it was definitely a monster movie. Was Frankenstein's monster a monster, or was he made that way? Was King Kong, a monster, or did society make him that way? And the answer is, if you're in a theater and you're a kid and that monster scares you, or if you're afraid to go into the water because of a shark, well, yeah, Jaws fits the mode. King Kong fits the mode. Absolutely.
Even Exorcist, if you want to get technical with it, it's about a priest who's having problems with his faith and problems with his mother who has Alzheimer's. He wants to put her into a home, and it's really his story. Technically it is a horror movie with the devil involved, but for the most part, it's a thriller about Father Karras. So
layers. It's brilliant because of the layers of how brilliant it is. Yeah, it's Father Karras, it's Linda Blair, it's the mom, and all the above. And a great guest you should probably get is Ellen Dietz, who was, if you've never had her, I
haven't had her in there.
Oh yeah, she's wonderful. And what people don't realize is she did most of the body stunts. She did most of the makeup. She was, more in that movie than Linda Blair was.
Well, I'm pretty sure, because I met her at one of the conventions. I never had her on the show yet, but didn't she do the cross scene, the crucifix in the bed?
She did. She should. I think the only thing she didn't do was that voice. I think that was Mercedes Cambridge or somebody else. There was one voice that she didn't do that they had an additional actress come in and do. But the famous crucifix scene was her. Yes.
Well, I know that William Friedkin was very, very tough on his actors. Ellen Burstyn said that there was where she got, when she walked in and she got thrown against the room, she hurt her back, and they were saying, please don't pull it, because they had harnesses on her or something like that. And so William Friedkin said, hold on. For the last one, he pulled her so hard, and she was so mad. She was screaming. I saw a documentary. And the other part that I want to talk about with The Exorcist, since we're on that subject, is remember when Father Karras jumps out or falls out the window, he gets pushed by the devil. At the end, the other priest is shaking like this, and he's like, he doesn't know what to do. What happened was, it wasn't believable enough. So William Friedkin said, do you trust me? He said, what do you mean? He goes, do you trust me? Yeah. Slapped him across the face as hard as he could and said, film it.
Wow.
Yeah. So he was really, really tough on his actors.
You can't get away with that.
No, not anymore.
I just did I do a lot of movies, and I did a film called The Bastard Son, where I come out of a shower and I get beaten up. That's pretty much my, I either get killed in these shows or I get beaten up. And in this one, this guy, twice my size, slams me against a door. I took it pretty good, fall down. I get up, and we look at the door. The door concaved in. It was If the door took more abuse than I did, thank goodness. But sometimes you got to roll with it.
Exactly. See, I love what you do, because you've been in, according to what you said and what I was doing when I was doing my research, at least 40 movies, TV shows, and commercials. So you've been in a lot. And the last one I saw you in, I love going to Connecticut Cult Classics, and Eric and Carson, I think their name. I know Carson.
The Bloomquists.
Bloomquist, yes. I'm friends with Carson, and they're going to be on the show as well. But I was watching the movie. Is it Night at Eagle Inn? I think it's called.
Night at the Eagle Inn.
Yes. And I said, I heard that voice. I said, where do I know that voice from? And then it didn't hit until the end. I think your first was the first name, Charles Rosenay. It's like, there he is again. Everywhere I go, I see either you're in a movie. I'm trying to think where else I saw you. Because there's another movie where I saw. Actually, here's where it was. Connecticut Classics, Horror Classics, they showed trailers before the movie, and there was a trailer where you were on the phone, you played a father for another independent movie. I can't remember the name of that one.
Yes, I'll tell you exactly what it was. And the reason it comes right to my brain is there's 2 theatrically released thrillers where mine is the first voice you hear in both of the trailers.
Yes.
So I played the dad in a movie called The Sadist, where Tom Savini is the killer. And the Night at Eagle Inn, I think my voice is the first voice you hear. I play the debutante. And that was a stretch for me, I'll admit. I like going over the top. If you need someone to go over the top, just like you, put you in a Beetlejuice outfit, you're over the top Beetlejuice. You put me in a film and you say, can you act demented? I was in a movie, Pink Eye, many years ago, which was I had to play an asylum escapee, and I'm trying to kill the hero, and it turns out that he crowbars me up the neck and he kills me. But at some points of it, they have the lunatics just walking in the background. And I said, I'm going to try something. Let's see if the producer director, let's see if they like it. And so I walked backwards like a slow motion Michael Jackson sort of a moonwalk backwards though. And when you're looking at the scene, I guess they didn't realize it till they saw the rushes and they looked at, what it looked like. They go, oh my God, he's amazing. They were so psyched, because in a lunatic asylum, it's very possible that someone might just be walking backwards for no reason, but it was a way to let me stand out in the scene as well.
I love it. It's like, act demented. I don't really have to act. It just comes naturally to me.
Please, of course.
No, you have to. I'm the same way. It's like when you're entertaining, you know exactly what to do. You know how to play to the camera, and everything I've seen you in, off camera or in front of the camera, you definitely know how to entertain. You've been doing this for so long. How did you get into movies?
So it's really funny, because my first credit is a film called A Gun for Jennifer. And I think it was the late 80s, probably. And I auditioned for it. And I remember them saying, get angry. We need you to be angry. Can you be angry as a British guy? And I'm like, yo, this is lingo and I'm really angry. I could not get angry. I just couldn't. And I guess they thought I was definitely going to do this role, because I was not cast in it. But when you see the credits at the end, it's got me in the film. And IMDb, I'm in this film.
That's funny.
So then I was working at a nightclub, and I had mentioned that I had gone out for this film, and this other guy who worked at the same place, it's just sign up in this, you can get cast and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, right, just sign up for cast. Well, I somehow got very lucky, and I would get calls. I got a call, and this was the most memorable one, is a casting agent had called, I had submitted myself, and they said, we see you can imitate Paul McCartney, you can imitate Billy Joel, can you imitate Elton John? And I said, of course I could. I'd never imitated Elton John, but I was taught that if someone says, can you do something? Can you roller skate with your with skates on your head? The answer is yes, because that'll give you 15 minutes to learn it. Well, anyway, so the 2 weeks I had to be there. Oh, I just thought of why I got into it. There was a movie called Across the Universe. It was a Beatles themed movie, and I really desperately wanted to be in that. And I submitted and got the role of when I walk into Cafe Wah, and I'm the producer, the record producer, and I'm wearing the satin jacket, and everyone's, oh, wow, he's here, that kind of thing. And the scene was cut. And I really wanted to be in it because it was a Beatle movie. And I always said to myself, look, I'm only going to be in rock and roll stuff or horror stuff. If I'm going to spend the time, go to New York for 5 days and sit for hours and be on the screen for 30 seconds, those were the two things: thrillers, horror, or music. But the Elton John one, sure enough, I came in, they fitted me, and something was missing. And I said, something with the mouth. I can't figure out what it was. And I went over to the costume designer and I said, can you give me a space in my teeth? Can you actually do that? Sure, easiest thing. They took an eyebrow pencil and coded a line. And with that one space, that one gap, I was Elton John. And it was great because I thought of some things afterwards that I could have done to give myself more of it. But I played Elton John in Flight of the Conchords on HBO, season 2. The episode was Prime Minister. There were 2 Elton Johns. I guess the 2 lead guys were Simon and Garfunkel. It was a whole tribute show. There was a fake Obama. It was really funny. And Patton Oswalt was the other Elton John. So he was upset that there was a second Elton John on the set, and that's how it played out.
That's funny. And the rest is history. You know who gave that advice about say yes to everything? Steven Spielberg, because I'm sure you know the movie Close Encounters.
Yeah.
All right. So there's an actor named Bob Balbin, which I'm sure you know. He's been in all the Christopher Guest movies.
Yes.
Yeah. So he played a French interpreter. So the first thing they asked him when he was trying out for that part said, "Can you speak French?" I said, "Of course I can." And he said he spoke the one thing he learned in high school 30 years prior. "All right, you got the part." And he goes, "Oh my God, what am I going to do now? I don't know how to speak French." And so Spielberg said, I had so much respect for him because always say yes, no matter what the director, producer asks you. Say, yes, I can do that. You're learning. Just get your foot in the door. So I love that mentality.
Yeah.
I have the same mentality. It's like, I never say no to anything. And if something doesn't work out, it usually opens the door to something else I never even knew was there. So it's like, oh yeah, I could do that. And then say if that bombs for some reason, oh wow, Rich, I can use you for that. So I'm just like you. I keep going and going. And I have a great time doing it.
Listeners, pay attention to both of us. Say yes, do everything. And if you don't think you can do it anyway.
Exactly. What's the worst that's going to happen? Nothing. You're just going to go home and say, okay, well, I'll try something else next time.
The key is to not care if you make a fool of yourself, I think. It's
fun to make a fool of yourself.
It's fun. People, I've been emceeing and DJing now for, oh my gosh, since my teens, and my breakthrough was when I realized that I'm the guy with the mic. Well, no matter what they're going to, it doesn't matter. The sillier I am, the funnier I am. And I always said, with the company, we said, we don't just stand there, we perform. And that has a double meaning, but it really meant we perform. We're out there with the crowd. We're dancing with the people. We're telling jokes. We're turning off the music for them to sing along. And that became, standard. But I'd like to think that I pioneered it, at least in this state of the interactive DJs, because before then, the DJs would sit on their chair and press a button. And I said, my God, a monkey can do that. A chimpanzee can press buttons and play music. It's having fun with the crowd. And it's thankfully, it's been a big success all these years.
Well, I first met you in 2005. And I want to talk about how I met you. But before I do that, when I met you, you were working at Boppers as an entertainment director. So what exactly is an entertainment director?
So I can't even mention that name that you just said, because it's a company that I sold, and we've been in legal battles and so on and so forth. But there was this nightclub in downtown New Haven where it was it was mostly older music. But for example, if Meatloaf, Paradise by the Dashboard Light, I would play. I would act it out with a gal, and we would act out the whole thing. Stop right there. And it would be an act. It would be a whole routine. We did Bohemian Rhapsody, and it was 3 people. It was a guy who's getting fried in an electric chair. It was the devil, and it's an angel fighting for his soul. I mean, we came up with plots for songs, and those were the more intricate ones. But then there were simple things like, do you love me? I can really move. And we had choreography, which I would come up with, and I would teach the staff. So when I would say, okay, gang, you're next, the waitresses stopped serving, the bartenders closed the bar, they got on top of the bar, the waitresses came on the stage with me. We all acted out the songs. It was like a Broadway show in downtown New Haven. The serving would stop, everyone would stare at us for 2-3 years. And by the time they all knew the dances, they were doing it with us. So interactive meant, it wasn't just playing music, it was acting it out. At one night, they counted, I did 52 costume changes, going from a Sergeant Pepper outfit to Elvis sideburns to Doctor, give me the news. And I was in a full Scrubs outfit. So that was fun for me. And I was the thinnest I'd ever been in my life, because I was every night was a workout for me. And then I was doing that Thursdays, Fridays, and Sundays, and I kept my Saturdays open because that's when I was doing all my weddings and bar mitzvahs and private parties. And people were coming to the club, meeting, and I would be doing their weddings 6 months later, that kind of thing. So it was a pretty good industry for a while.
Sounds like it. It's almost like if Rocky Horror Picture Show had a baby with the 60s. With the oldies.
I never thought of that, but that, of course, the Time Warp was one of our standard dances. That was in there. Songs from The Idolmaker was in there.
I love that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great movie.
We had a dance to a song called Here Is My Love from that movie.
Yeah.
Fun stuff.
And, I think it was Cesare was his name. It was, Peter Gallagher was the actor. Such a great movie.
Yes. Baby, I just want to take you where
I'm going.
But he'd make him do it over and over. Ray Sharkey, harder.
Yeah, it's funny. I met him at one of the conventions too, Ray Sharkey, and I could care less about all the. I did like Bound. I love that movie, but I basically just wanted to talk about The Idolmaker. He goes, "Wow, yeah, really?" I said, "I love that movie." He was such a low key character in that movie.
Yeah,
and they were saying that movie was based on the manager who represented Fabian and somebody else. I think it was. I
think Fabian, Frankie Avalon.
Frankie Avalon. Yeah.
Those guys from Philly. I think so. But other entrepreneurs from the time said no, it was about me. I think everybody who managed those type of singers probably thought it was about them. There's another movie that I always wanted to do routine to, but none of the songs lent themselves to it. And when people ask me, what's my favorite horror movie, I do say The Exorcist. And if they ask me what's my favorite overall movie, it's usually I Want to Hold Your Hand, yeah, the Bob Gale Zemeckis. But there's a movie that always sneaks in, and I don't know if you know it. It's a combination of Faust, of Dorian Gray, of Phantom of the Opera. It's all these combined with Paul Williams' music. And it's a movie called Phantom of the Paradise. And it's something that people don't know. And what made me think of it is when you mentioned Rocky Horror Picture Show, because that's the rock musical with a horror theme that the world knows. That became a cult classic. But Phantom of the Paradise is actually better.
I always love that because there's certain movies people cannot badmouth at all. Like, I'm not really a big fan of Rocky Horror. Oh my God, I can't believe that. Or I don't like Monty Python. What? Oh my God, who are you? It's funny how people are so loyal to those movies or the comedy troupes. Like, everybody has their own opinion. I don't have to like everything you like, but it's funny. Yeah, I get that. I'm like, Rocky Horror wasn't really that great. Oh my God. It's funny. The first time I actually saw that was when I was in Transylvania on the bus.
Was the first time you saw it?
I never saw the movie.
I always said you can't beat the soundtrack. Every song is phenomenal. Tim Curry's, but the plot, it's all right. It's fun. It's a fun movie. It's a great, what it became as a cult midnight classic. Just unbelievable industry. It was a great brand, and I love it. I do love it, but I like Phantom of the Paradise a hair more.
Right. So for me and all my viewers out there, check out that movie. I'm definitely gonna be checking that out later on. In the bio I was reading when you were the entertainment director at the place that will not be named, it said you stated that you warmed up audience both in the US and overseas. So what'd you do? You took all your stuff, went on a plane and went over to Europe and did the same thing?
So there would be clubs. I remember I opened a club in Ocala and I brought an assistant with me, and I just brought, maybe a suitcase full of wigs and costumes just to be interactive, but it was more about going into the crowd and doing line dances with the microphone. Overseas, I would actually do a show every year for many years at the Hard Rock Cafe in London. And a few times I got to do my DJ show at the Cavern Club in Liverpool. So those were really special. I lived in Japan for about 8 months when I was managing a band, and nothing to do with the Beatles, a pop new wave type band. And I'd been to Japan like 3, 4, 5 times. So when I was there, I also got to do some guest things in clubs, but it was more like I just missed it so much that I begged the DJ to let me take over for a little while, that kind of thing. So it wasn't a pre-planned, it was just sort of, trust me, please trust me, I'm not going to embarrass you. And it was a little different than they'd expected, but it was fun.
When you went over there, you really didn't have a job per se. You went over there and said, oh yeah, let me take a break. I can handle this for you. That's how it really started.
Well, so it was only 1 or 2 nights. It was only in clubs that I thought really needed. I was managing a band at the time. I had a mullet. I had really long dark hair. So when we walked into a club, there was the 4 members and myself. Everyone with all the Japanese girls was, oh my God. And they didn't know. They thought we could have been, I don't know, Anthrax or Duran Duran. They had, they thought we were, this amazing either English or American band. And they didn't know if I was a member or what. So, they'd bring over drinks, they'd give us a VIP area. And then I would say, could I, DJ for a few minutes? So they'd say, of course, this is a celebrity. And it's really funny. I remember that same night, I was wearing a black jumpsuit. I just think you remember things, and it just hit me. And we left there, and it was like 2 a.m, and we said, we're still awake. We're in Japan. We're in Tokyo. We want to do something. And we went to an outdoor a baseball batting cage on a roof that was open 24 hours. And where else but Japan? Where else but Tokyo? And we all just batted for about an hour. It was so fun.
What was the name of the band?
Well, so the new wave band that I brought over was called the Excerpts. And we went over there, and they're really close. We had a Japanese record deal on the cusp. They wanted to do a video for us, but the guys were pretty young, and I think they got homesick. One of them has gone on to be an amazing musician who's played with great people, Dean Falcone, and the another one who comes to mind is John Bryan, Brion, who's doing music for Pixar. He did Punch Drunk Love. He's really made a name for himself doing film music in LA. So they went on to great things, but I'll always remember these kids with me walking through the streets of Tokyo.
I hear a lot of stories about metal bands that maybe were popular at one time, but then when they go overseas, they're still major rock stars. But they said the difference is in America, when somebody loves you, they're going crazy, they're clapping, they're screaming. And in Japan, they're so docile and so like, yes, they clap, and they're like, do they really like me? Are they happy with the show? But they're just so respectful that they sit back down, little clap, and then that's it.
The crowd is so respectful. I'll tell you something that blew my mind. I do the Beatles tours to Liverpool. One year we went to see George Harrison in Japan. We brought a group of about 40 fans, and we went to see him in 3 different concerts. And he never did shows thereafter. It was a miracle that we went, and thank goodness we did. It was Eric Clapton's band, and when the show ended, people were sitting in their seats. Yeah. What's going on? Why are they sitting in their seats? And they waited, and security guard would release one section. They'd get up, they'd leave, they'd wait. The next section would get up and leave. What the heck? They were so polite and so reserved that was the way they did it. They left in order, and it was started with the front seats because they probably paid the most, and it worked its way back. And not one person would get up and try to, upset the order of things. They understood that this was the best way to do it, the most organized and professional and classy way to do it. So yeah, no, they never screamed, but you know what? That changed. The Monkees, New Kids on the Block. If there were those teen bands and it was teen girls, there was screaming there, but not for the metal bands. That was respect. Yeah. Yeah,
that's fun. I want to go talk about your love of reality competition shows such as American Idol and America's Got Talent.
Where did you get that from? I love those shows. And that's not in my bio. How did you know this?
I've known you for a long time, Charles. I've done my research.
There was something called Stars on the Web, and it was a Connecticut company that tried to get that going. And they had Rex Fowler from Aztec Two Step, AJ from WPLR's morning show, Chaz and AJ, and myself. Dude, I had so much fun being Simon Cowell. You have no idea. Because the other two guys, well, they were kind of known and they didn't want to ruin their reputation. They had to be polite. And I would just zing it if it was true. I had so much fun doing that. And I guess it harkens back Star Search. I've always loved not Big Brother or Bachelor or any of those type of reality shows, but the shows where people could entertain. I mean, I was salivating with Justin Guarino and Kelly Clarkson. You know, the first America's Got Talent, American Idol was, whoa, this is like, oh my God. And I remember my dad was, getting on in age, and I go, Dad, no matter what, don't tell me who wins. He watched it the night before. I put it on VCR. I was gonna watch it the next night. I come home and he goes, wait, I'm not supposed to tell you that she won? What am I not supposed to tell you?
Smooth, Dad, real smooth.
He knew he couldn't tell me something, but he couldn't remember what it was that he wasn't supposed to tell me.
Oh, that is funny.
Yeah, Dad, did you see Sixth Sense and were the ghosts who they were? Well, who was the ghost, Dad? Come on, let's give everything away. Let's spoil it all.
Type of guy to walk out of Star Wars in 1977 going, I can't believe Darth Vader is Luke's father. What? There's people in line waiting for the next showing.
Oh my. You mentioned Star Wars. You're a big Star Wars guy, right?
Yes.
I walked out of Star Wars. It was a midnight show. I came home and wrote a review for the New Haven Advocate. I thought, this is going to put me through. I'm going to start writing reviews. And I panned it and said how it was just nothing but a kid's space cowboy movie, and that Logan's Run was I compared the two, and I said, Logan's Run is going to live forever. This is the genius movie of the decade. And I kind of was wrong on that one, huh? I never saw a Star Wars movie since.
No, you know what? Empire Strikes Back is definitely my favorite because it has the dark ending and it's a little bit more. Yeah, the first one, I will admit, to me it was kind of boring. The second one I loved. Return of the Jedi, the Ewoks. By that time I was getting a little older. I said, yeah. So I do understand what you're saying, but I did like it. But I know people that were diehards and would see it 8-10 times. I wasn't that much of a diehard. Jaws I did 17 times. Star Wars I did 2 or 3 times. But yeah, I do know what you're saying.
In retrospect, it's probably because it was a midnight showing and I was in college. Probably I was half asleep.
Yeah.
So it wasn't even fair of me to hate it. But when you do that and you go on a limb like that, I could never retract. I could never go back and watch it and say, oh, it wasn't so bad.
I have to say though, I am a huge Logan's Run fan. Michael York, Farrah Fawcett Majors. Come on, I love that movie.
Cool. And I just sold my run of Logan's Run comic books, only to find out that number 6, is it? It's a key issue because it's got Thanos' first appearance. I never realized that the Marvel Universe connected with Logan's Run as well. So that was pretty cool.
Wow. Yeah, I'm learning a lot too. I didn't realize that myself. To get back to the reality shows, I have to say my all-time favorite reality show was Chuck Barris and the Gong Show. I loved that show as a kid.
my persona in those days was based on it. I would do Chucky. I would walk in hats. When I was doing that club and I was being silly, I thought that's who I was trying to emulate. I got to meet him years later at R.L. Julia's at the bookstore, and he did a book signing, and he was so quiet and so reserved. And he gave me his home address because I wanted to get a top 10 list from him, and he had passed shortly thereafter. He had just moved away to North Carolina or something, whatever. But I got to meet him. I got to get his autograph, and that was a real thrill. But yes, to the point that when they did the Gong Show again years later, and even in its most recent incarnation, I submitted my son to the Gong Show because he was doing treadmill dancing for a while. Just on his own, I would watch him and he was walking backwards, he was going sideways, he was doing slow-mo, he was doing stuff that I'd never seen on a treadmill. But I guess he'd seen some of my videos from those days where I used to do "Who's Making Love to Your Old Lady," and so on the treadmill, he's going, Well, when I submitted it, they rejected it because of the
Oh,
and it's
really?
too bad.
That's funny. Unfortunately, in this PC world that we live in, things like that do happen. But for me, I loved Gene the Dancing Machine, the Unknown Comic. When I met Jamie Farr at one of the conventions, and we were talking about Klinger and MASH, I said, I don't care about that. Gong Show. Let's talk about the Gong Show. And he was talking about the Unknown Comic, Chuck Barris. And I said, whatever happened to Gene the Dancing Machine? I said, well, he goes, well, he lost his legs due to diabetes. I said, boy, yeah, I know.
Let me show you something. The book, top 10 lists, right?
Yes.
Who's there?
The Unknown Comic.
The Unknown Comic. Murray Langston gave me a top 10 list.
I love it.
Great. It's a great one. And his credits are way beyond. I mean, he did so much stuff that I didn't even realize till I write the bios for each of them. And I think he lived with Linda Blair. They were roommates for a while. So there was
a movie called Night Patrol as well. She played the cop, and he was going around telling really bad jokes, and she had to try and find them to stop him from telling jokes. It was hilarious.
I think he might have also been on the Sonny and Cher Good Time Hour, and yeah, he had a lot of credits. So that's one of the fun parts of the book is when you go through it, and it's oh my God, I'd forgotten about him. He's one of those people that you wouldn't think of. We're talking about Gong Show, so it comes up in conversation. But, without looking, if you hadn't mentioned him, I would not have said, okay, well, he's in the book too. It's cool.
How did you meet him?
I don't remember. Someone must have given me his email or his phone. I don't know. There's about 10 or 12 lists in this book in going back where I found where they gave me permission to use it. I found where they sent me the original email. Oh, I love this idea. I had a few rejections. Peter Tork from the Monkees wrote the sweetest, refusal. He didn't watch enough horror movies to come up with a list. But Murray Langston is one of the ones I don't remember how I got.
He seems like a great guy. I mean, like you said, I've seen him in other things, but I will always know him as the Unknown Comic. Speaking of Gong Show, you were a featured judge in Las Vegas. How'd that happen?
Was I?
Yes.
What was that? Tell me, please. I don't remember. A featured judge.
Featured judge for the Gong Show in Las Vegas. That's what it says in your. I was reading your bio, and that's what it said.
A featured judge on a Gong Show, and no, I was a featured judge when I was going to school at Southern, and the Gong Show was taking place at a club which turned into a strip joint, Jindy's, and before that it was Rusty's something or other. I was a featured judge in that. I was a featured judge on Star of the Web, but I don't recall being a featured judge in Vegas.
Well, it says it right here. Well, it says he was a featured judge in the live Gong Show in Las Vegas, Atlantic City, and Cancun. And then you were the main judge for 2 years in an area American Idol meets American talent competition.
Right. So Stars of the Web is the Connecticut one that I mentioned before. So there was a traveling show called Gong Show Live in Vegas. And so when it went to different places, in Cancun, I think I was the judge because I was in the crowd and they asked for a volunteer, and that's what it was. So it wasn't in Vegas, but the name of the show was Gong Show Live in Vegas. Whew. Okay.
I knew we'd get to the bottom of that.
Good job, Mr. Detective Claw, man. You're amazing.
Who needs Columbo? We have Detective Claw.
That's it.
You have so many connections. You also have a connection with QVC. What's that all about?
Wow. You've done more homework than any of the podcasts combined.
Thank you.
I was invited. I was publishing Good Day Sunshine, the Beatles magazine at the time, doing Beatles Convention. I was the Beatles go-to guy, to the point that if somebody wanted an interview with Pete Best in England, Sid Bernstein, the Beatles guy who brought the Beatles, they would come to me as a media go-between, and they would say, how do I get in touch with? And it would usually be, hi, can you put me through to Paul McCartney or Ringo? No, I can't do that. Maybe I can get you through to this one or that one, and it would be down the line of, of who was important, and they would say, oh yeah, we'll talk to that one. And I guess being in that, QVC were doing some Beatles specials, the Home Shopping Channel, and they were selling like a line of Beatles stuff, and they needed a Beatles celebrity. So they called me to get a Beatles celebrity, and I, of course, sold myself. So they got me down to Philly or wherever it was that they filmed, and I was on like a bunch of times with Steve Bryant, who was the pop culture seller. And what I had to do is they would talk about the item, and then they would say, well, where were the Beatles at the time? Or what did the Beatles, and I would give Beatles history, and I would talk about, the tours I did, and I would find ways to plug what I was doing. I just remember the toughest part of that. The first time I came on, I came in full suit and tie, and the co-host said, you were great. You were so personality, but you were stiff. Lose the jacket and tie. And the next time I came on with one of those rock and roll satin jackets.
All
and
right.
He said, all the difference in the world. But the way we talk, I'm looking all over. Sometimes I'm looking at you. In the QVC studios, they have monitors on the ground in front of you. And calls would come in, and someone would say, hi, I want to buy that Beatles wristwatch. You know what I mean? Charles, have you ever been to Liverpool? And I was supposed to continue to look in the camera, but I would look down at that speaker where the voice was coming from. And I'm remembering that was I couldn't, no matter what I wanted to do, I could not stop from cheating and looking down at the speaker because the voice was coming from there. And that's one of my memories of that. My other memory is they put me up in like a Waldorf or a Four Seasons. It was really probably the classiest hotel I'd been in for ages. And I hadn't slept because I was so excited about it. And then all of a sudden, my alarm's not going off, but I'm getting a phone call. And I'm going to pick this up. It's probably mates or what. And so I roll over, I pick it up. Hi, this is your driver. You were supposed to be down in 10 minutes. From where? I was in a zone. He goes, this is QVC sent me over. I go, oh, okay, I'll be down in 10 minutes. The fastest I showered, the fastest I went to the bathroom, the fastest I did my hair. 7 minutes I was down there, and it was, that's the only time I think in my life. I'm always early for things, and that's part of, we talk about when someone says, can you do something, always say yes. Another thing is always be early, as you know, because I was supposed to be with you at 9 o'clock and I was on at 9:02. So you know that I'm good at that, right? I'm good at being on time.
Yes, that is very, very true.
That's a QVC home shopping memory. And I got to find that because I know I have those appearances on VHS somewhere. And in those days, I was on so many things. Sally Jesse Raphael. I was on the Phil Donahue show. I was doing all these things, and they're all on VHS. But for the life of me, I have no idea where they are.
If they're on YouTube.
Somewhere. They're not. And I need to put them on YouTube is what I need to do.
I see you looking at your vast collection right now. Like, I wonder where they are.
I'm looking around and saying, wait, I used to have this. I don't know where it is now.
Well, you have an alias, or nickname, I should say, Cryptmaster Chucky. How'd that come about?
So I use that with a lot of the horror stuff. I've been in a lot of locally produced horror shorts. Doug Palatamo has a company called ScaredStiff.tv, and he's put out amazing quality horror shorts, Hollywood quality stuff. And I've been in a bunch of his shows, but at some point he thought he was going to launch a channel where there was a horror host who would bring on all these shorts and read reviews. And so I came up with this horror host persona, and it was a Cryptmaster Chucky. And it was originally Cryptmaster Chiller Chucky, because I was so enamored with Chiller Theater, and I love that. But at some point, I think I was on another convention as the DJ host using the same name, and that was a conflict. Like, wait, how can I be a Chiller guy at a competing convention? So I dropped the Chiller and made it just Cryptmaster Chucky. But I think it looks, it looks good on the book when a horror book is by Cryptmaster Chucky. Oh yeah, that's Charles F. Rosenay. I tend to put the horror stuff as Cryptmaster Chucky, and the music and rock and roll and DJ and all the other stuff, Charles Rosenay with the 3 exclamation marks, of course.
Of course. That's how we know the real Charles Rosenay from the all the pale imitators.
except on social media, where like Facebook and all those don't allow characters on your name. It's only a name. So it's really funny because every so often people will say, is this really Charles Rosenay? If so, where are your exclamation marks? People write this to me.
That
like,
is funny.
Doubting if I'm the real guy because I don't have the exclamation marks.
She said, no, this is Charles Rosenay with the question mark. We're not sure if it's the real one.
like Tony.
There's only one Charles Rosenay. No exclamation point or none. I want to talk about how I first met you, which I mentioned was back in 2005. You were working at Boppers, but I wanted to go on a tour, and there was a tour I read about. It's Transylvania. That sounds like a fun trip. You were running that tour. I had the time of my life. Got to go to Dracula's castle, Vlad the Impaler. Got to spend Halloween night there. Yes, we
still do it. Since 1998, we've been bringing groups on a vampire vacation, spending time in Dracula's castle. What we do is, as you know, we combine the legend, the fiction, the horror, and the monsters of Dracula with the history, the facts, and the reality of Vlad Tepes. And they come together so harmoniously, to the point that I was just saying this the other day. There's not a lot of businesses, whether you're the best restaurant in the world, you're going to get that 1-star review. You're going to get somebody who was upset because the tea was too hot or the ice cream was too cold, whatever silly reason. I am so proud that we've gotten 100% satisfaction since 98, and we've been doing every year except for COVID, every year bringing people overseas to what's literally, I mean, it's a third world country. I mean, it's Eastern Europe. It's not, we're not taking them to New York or LA. We're taking them to places where there's not paved roads, where horse and buggies ride alongside of our coach. And to come away from that and people have that same great shared experience that you did and come back and just say, my God, that was the greatest vacation. There's nothing more satisfying than that. I'm so proud that all our tours have been, it was kind of my vision. I always say for the fans, by the fans, but that's, trite and overused, but it really does apply. It's how I would want a Beatles tour to be, how I would want a Dracula tour to be. We do the offshoots, the ghost tours. We go to England, Scotland, Ireland, Hungary, all these great places. And I build the itinerary. There have been trips in the past that bring people to Transylvania. It's senior citizens who get up for breakfast, do a little sightseeing, have lunch, a little more sightseeing, have dinner, and go to bed. Ours begins after dinner. That's when we come alive. We're like vampires, right?
Exactly. It's nonstop partying. And I don't know if you remember my story, but on the trip, I met a woman from Texas. She and I hooked up Halloween night, Dracula's castle. Let's just say Vlad wasn't the only impaler that night. But anyway, she and I got together. We became engaged. I was going to move to Texas. We were going to get married. I booked another trip. We were going to get married in Dracula's castle, where we met on Halloween night with you on your tour. Yeah. Unfortunately, we broke up. But that I wish I got married, because that would have been worth the divorce. Because
well, we've had people, as you know, we've had people get married in Dracula's castle, on Snagoff Island, which is the monastery where Vlad's bones
take the boat out.
In Shigasora, where Vlad was born. Yeah, we've had weddings there. We've had weddings at the gates of Strawberry Fields in Liverpool, and we've had weddings at Fright Haven, which I no longer run, but we right in the haunted attraction. So that's been pretty cool. I guess I'm responsible for some of those things. A lot more shacking up than weddings, though. These trips used to lead them. Now we're all married and we're older, but in those days, they were sexy trips. They led, a little drinking, a little scares, a little under the moon howling. They led to that.
Well, like you said, the real trip began after dinner, and that's when we all went out. We had a great time, but I loved it because first thing in the morning we got up, got on that bus, and you know what I like about the tour? When I was there was two hosts or two tour guides. One was Radu, he was an older gentleman.
Radu, of course.
One, is he still there?
Yeah.
Oh my God,
Absolutely.
he was great. But you know what I like, because there was a younger version. I got both sides of the story because Radu reveres Vlad the Impaler. He thinks that he's going to be coming back. He's the one that saved them from the invading Turks. Then the younger generation said, Vlad was crazy. He was out of control. So it's funny getting both perspectives from the older generation and the younger generation, who would Radu, I guess, you know, obviously you know the story, but we know that they supposedly found his bones. Then they realized later it was just cats and dogs.
Animal bones, right?
Yeah, so nobody even really knows. But it was so interesting because I'm a huge fan of horror movies. I'm a huge fan of history. And before I went, I read a biography on Vlad. And so I knew everything about it. But actually being at the things I read about and hearing it from people that lived there. And you know who was great too? The Gypsies. The Gypsies were great.
Amazing, right?
Yeah.
On the Halloween night, before we even went into the castle for our, masquerade ball, we were outside and we would have the barbecue, right? We'd have an open fire. We'd have the steaks on the slab, and the gypsy musicians would be playing all this great klezmer and Romanian and Hungarian and all this great Middle Eastern music. Oh, phenomenal. Just you're bringing me back to it. I stopped going on the trips in 2006 when I started opening up the haunted attractions, and I'm hopefully going back this summer because we do a summer version of it and we do the Halloween version, and I just miss it. And from what I read in the tour reports, the places that were really run down, like near Snagoff, and we'd have to go over by the rowboat. Now they have yachts there. That's like the highest valuable property. It's all, people from Germany and all over the world bought property there to be oceanside. And so it's really changed a lot. Some of the Alps, it's considered the European Alps, the Carpathian Mountains and Borgo Pass are ski chalets now. So they really modernized, they've really westernized, but they've kept the Black Church and Shigasora and all the original stuff. So now you're getting like Liverpool, like when you go to England for the Beatles tour, you're getting the best of both worlds because you still have all the things that I always say, you have all the things you read about in the books, seen in postcards, viewed on movies, but it still comes to life. I mean, how amazing is it when you're actually living what you've seen in movies? It's amazing.
I love that. I want to go back. I talk about this trip all the time. I tell people, he said, if you have never had a chance to go, do it. It's definitely worth it. And I had so much fun. I want to go on the ghost tour. You said that you go to Europe. Is that correct?
Yeah. So the people had such a great time, like yourself, on the Dracula tour, and they would come to me and say, Charles, we had a great time, but we want to wait, 15, 10, 20, whatever years before we go back to Romania. Can't you do other trips? And I said, yeah, sure. And we did a Dracula, it was like Dracula Part 2. It was a ghost tour to England. So we go to the abbeys where Bram Stoker wrote Dracula, parts of it. And we go to the most Borley Castle. I really did a lot of research with my partner, Danny, at the time. And we found all the scariest places that are within, 1 week's travel, that we didn't have to travel too far, from one place to another. Mind you, when we travel, we show horror movies on board. We do trivia. We keep people entertained. The ones that are a little too maybe over whatever, they fall asleep. They can sleep on the coach. That's fine. I don't disturb them. They got to get some sleep sometime. But we don't make the trips too long so that we're going from city to city, and we're going from a scary castle to a scary cemetery to scary abbeys to Whitby, where all the goths and all the witches and all that great stuff are. So Jack the Ripper, everything that you could find scary in England, we did. Everyone had a great time. 50 more people said, well, what's next? Okay, back to the drawing board. Got right home. We did a Scotland tour because there's amazing haunted castles throughout Scotland. Then it was Ireland. Then it was Prague and East Germany, which included Frankenstein's castle. Did that 3 times. Then we're starting, well, where else can we go? We did Hungary. We did Cuba. And people said, well, what's scary in Cuba? We're going to show you. And we showed places where students were killed during the revolution. And we went to a Santeria church, so to speak. It's where voodoo, it's the relative of voodoo. I don't practice Santeria. I ain't got no crystal ball. So Santeria is a religion there. We went to a session where we saw how they did it. They taught us. One girl got so affected, she fainted. It was really, amazing. And then so he said, well, where else can I go? I mean, we've done all really the scariest places. And someone said, well, can we do the Middle East? And I said, well, that is scary. That's for sure. I don't know if we can take a chance. But sure enough, we put together a program for Ghost Tour to Israel. And people said, what's scary in Israel? And my answer to that is, what's not scary in Israel? Everything biblical as a horror story to it. There were these underground caverns. That was like, we only had like 30, 40 people went on the trip, but they came back and said, oh my God, you overdo yourself. Every trip is greater than the one before. So we've never, ever had a clunker. During the pandemic, we haven't gone overseas. So I said, I got to recreate myself a little and do something that's been done before, but with a twist. And we did Ghost Tour to New Orleans in 2021. And we did, one night was a vampire crawl, one night was a voodoo crawl, and one night was the paranormal ghost crawl. And the people just had the greatest time. That we're doing Ghost Tour to San Francisco this summer. So along with the Dracula tour, with the Beatles tours, with the overseas ghost tours, we're going to do one stateside weekend every year, which is a ghost themed weekend.
So like with the Romania trip, do you have people run those trips while you stay home, or do you go on these trips as well?
Right. So when I felt that the Radus of the world really had it down and knew that if I wasn't there, they would still bring them to great clubs at night, that they would still find that one extra thing to do so they would have a great time, that I didn't have to DJ the masquerade party. They would bring in a DJ who would do not just Romanian rap, but everything else. So when I felt that I was really, really comfortable, that's when I decided I didn't have to do it. And it's kind of around the time 2006, whenever we had, kind of a depression when the economy was affected. So my numbers went from 100, sometimes 120 travelers down to 30, 40, or 50 travelers. So one person on one coach could handle it.
Definitely. Now, there's a mutual friend that we have, Nicholas Robert Grossman. How did you connect with him, become the shaman and the showman?
You know Nick?
Yeah.
Nick's the real deal.
He's a great guy.
Nick can walk into a house and he'll go over to the piano and say, there's a room behind here. And they go, yeah, someone killed or someone died, someone had a disease. And he's right. He gets it. We've gone to places. We did an exploration at the Sonia Opera House. And he says, right there, I see things. He sees things. I'm looking at there and I'm thinking he's crazy. And I took pictures, and I have apparitions in my camera, or red orbs, which are unusual. So I believe in him. And how did we meet? He came to Friedhaven. He came to my haunted house. I greeted him at the door. I said, I give him my spiel, and he goes, this place is haunted. And I go, duh. Yeah, I made it that way. Of course, it's a haunted attraction. He goes, no, listen to me. The place is truly haunted. And I'm thinking, ooh, sure. He goes in, has a great time, and follows up. He insists that he meet me. He says, I've got to do an investigation here. Well, we decided to do a promotion because at Friedhaven, it's the lower level. It's 20,000 square feet, goes on forever indoors. And there's an upstairs, because it used to be a gym. It used to be a movie theater and a gym. When it was a gym, there's that one room that every gym has where there's mirrors all over the mirror. And he said this would be great for seance, for what he calls a scrying session. I learned all this stuff through him. And we went and did this effect, lit all the candles, stared at mirrors. People were seeing their dead relatives in the mirror. People were seeing themselves levitate. They were seeing, there's 50 people in the room. They were seeing the rest of the people disappear in the room, and they just saw themselves. Someone else saw just the people and themselves disappear. So I said, you know what? There's something to this. We did a little more research. You ready for this? Friedhaven and that whole plaza was built on Indian burial ground. And he's right. It is haunted. So I was sold. He says, we got to do stuff together. I go, sure. We started going, we don't do this anymore because we're not allowed to. We took people to Dudleytown, which is one of the scariest places in Connecticut. We can do a whole story on that. I'll bring Nick back and we'll tell you some of the experiences there. Stepney Cemetery, where the Warrens are buried. A lot of really cool places. And he said, Charles, we got to do a paranormal convention. And I'm thinking, well, what do I do best? Three things. I can talk forever, so that's one of them. I'm a great father, but we'll take those aside. I'm a great DJ, MC. I'm fun. I can do amazing tours. I can make people have fun. And Beatle conventions I've been doing, wow, since I was in college. So it wasn't such a far stretch to do a paranormal convention. And I said, all right, Nick, I think we should find a small, conservative place. Let's be modest. Hopefully we'll draw about 100 people a day. We'll have it for 2 days. And he did the guest list. He helped get the vendors, and I do all the things that I know how to do with a convention. Would you believe that we had 1,500 people? And it was Connecticut's first ever paranormal convention. The shaman, Nick, and the showman combined forces. And what a great success to the fact that we're having one again in July at the Armory in Ansonia. And I can tell you that we're going to be doing one in Salem, Massachusetts in November. The first ever world-class paranormal convention in Salem of that magnitude. So very excited.
Definitely gonna see me at both of them. I went last year and I loved it. It was great. Place was packed, had such a great time, had great guests, great vendors. You, as always, kept everybody entertained, got on stage, did trivia, talked about different things, had people, interviewed some people. It was a fun time. I loved it. So I cannot wait to go back.
It was a rare situation where everything clicked. Just everyone who had, even the vendors never leave a show and thank a promoter. It's like, we could have done better. It was all right. It sucked. They were kissing me. When's the next one? We had the greatest time. It was so amazing. So that you feel good because I've been a vendor millions of times at shows, and there are clunkers where no one shows up or no one spends, or they show up and they just walk around. This one, every psychic was visited. They were doing readings nonstop. The ones who brought the horror merch selling like crazy. I'd like to think that now where there's those two conventions in the state, there's Horror Fest and there's us, both different. One's pure horror, one's paranormal. There's some crossover, but the folks who go to both of those are as good. Those two shows, in my opinion, here in Connecticut are as good as any of the shows around the country.
Oh, definitely. I want to tell you my past with the paranormal because I love the paranormal. I love everything about it. And I was lucky enough, I live in Connecticut, home of the Warrens. And
yes,
back in the day, the Warrens, they were really popular. But before The Conjuring, it's going to be a scary story. Get ready.
I'm getting scared. I'm ready.
So they
go.
They used to run tours, and it would be $25 a person. You had to have at least 4 people, so it would be $100. So I've been over their house. I went to the museum. I have pictures of the Annabelle doll. I have pictures of different things taken from Aleister Crowley's house. Picture of a dinosaur that was actually The Conjuring 3 was based on this that dinosaur, which The Conjuring 3 was a great movie, but had nothing to do with the real story. So I'm glad that because as soon as Lorraine was still alive when The Conjuring came out. Ed died before that, but I was able to go over there, and they were high profile, but nothing like after the movie came out. But not too long ago, I love going on ghost tours, and I went on a tour in Mystic, and the woman was saying, "Oh yeah, there's years ago in the Civil War period, these 2 young boys, they were killed, but they had a great sense of humor. They love to show themselves." So I'm across the street without a flash, taking pictures, and I was just going on about my day. Afterwards, I look at it, and somebody says, "What's that thing in the corner?" And thank God we can zoom in now with the phone, because if it was just regular, the disposables, I wouldn't be able to see this. I zoomed in. I'm going to send you this picture. Has 2 boys in the window, and it matched perfectly with that. And it's funny because I went to another paranormal convention. It was in Massachusetts. was probably was in October I went, and I said, "You're probably not gonna remember me." She said, "No, you're the kid. You're the guy who took the picture of the two kids." I said, "Okay, you remember me," but she goes, "I show that to everybody," and I guess she put it on her website, and I did.
Wow.
Yeah, so I actually I'm one of your vendors. Um, he's a Reverend Larry. I can't remember what his last name is.
Elward.
Elward, yes, he was
Yeah.
on my show, and I was interviewing he and his wife,
Yes.
and I showed them a picture, like, oh, somebody else showed me this too. So that's funny that like this woman keeps showing everybody this picture. So I bring him to all the different conventions, and I said, I want somebody to prove me wrong. I want somebody to tell me, do you know what this is? And nobody so far can tell me differently than it's a great
Wow.
picture.
That's
But yeah, it
phenomenal.
matched. I could see if maybe I took a picture and it didn't have anything to do with what the woman was saying. I'm like, oh, it's just because everybody's telling me, oh, it was probably fixed and somebody was in there. I said, I looked inside, there was nobody in there, and it's not a haunted house, it's a haunted tour. So there's a difference. This wasn't fake where people were in there trying to jump and scare you. It was just
Right.
people talking about historical stories.
Yes.
And so I don't know, maybe real, maybe not, but it's I'm going to send it to you and I want to get your opinion on it.
It's funny because I always said I'm a skeptic, I'm a non-believer, and then I take pictures and I'm just blown away by some of the stuff that's in the, well, like you just described. When we went to Salem, we went to a theater, and the guy says a boy was killed in that theater, and Nick says, yeah, right there. He points to an area. We start taking pictures. Wouldn't you know, we've got the shape of a boy in that area. So there's got to be something to all of this. And let's tip our hats to the Warrens, because I say this now more than I ever did. When you're in magic, you talk about Houdini. When you're in the paranormal, you talk about the Warrens. And we took them for granted. They were alive. They do their show at Southern every year. They'd go to Quinn, they'd be everywhere. And, people would go, but I don't think we maybe appreciate them as much as we could have, the way the rest of the world now does because of the Conjuring shows and all that. But I will tell you that when I started the Ghost Tours as an offshoot from the Dracula Tours, we called them first. And we said, we'd love for you to come on the trips with us as our guests. And your name, I think, will draw more people. It gives us credibility. We'd love for you to come. We'll pay you whatever it is. And she felt she was too old and frail at that time to go on the tours. And I will tell you a story that we were invited over their house to the museum, to the basement, the famous
Yes.
basement. And I didn't go. I don't know if it was because I was too scared or I was too busy, but Danny, who was my partner at the time, went. I don't know if you remember Danny, but he was my cohort and my partner in crime and just about everything. And he tells me about going downstairs and telling him about all these things and suggesting a guy named John Zaffis maybe come on the trip instead. And he said, we're not in shape to do it. And then the phone rings and it says, stay here, don't touch anything, I'll be right back. Don't touch that window glass thing. I didn't even tell you what that is yet. And Danny looks over and he sees a doll in it, goes upstairs. Danny's standing there and that doll's window case opens up by itself.
Was that Annabelle?
It was Annabelle, and Danny did a beeline up the stairs. He was not going to stay there 1 second longer. Wow, right?
That is funny. It's funny. They used to take us on late night tours after the tour of the museum to Stepney Cemetery, like you mentioned. And
Yes.
The only thing I ever saw there were unfortunately the cops kicking us out. And they'd say, "What are you guys doing in here?" Then Ed would say, "Excuse me, they're with us." "Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Warren. Have a great night."
Yeah.
So they did a lot of the tours. You actually did a tour. I'm going to ask you about this. It was in Middlebury with the little people. Tell me about that.
Yeah, Nick, said we have to go to this place. It's called the Little People Village. I'd never heard of it. I guess there's two similar places in the state. One is Holy Land in Waterbury, which
Yeah.
I've never been to, and it's supposed to be not safe. And then this Little People Village where, sure enough, a woman was possessed by fairies. Nick can tell the story much better, but she was told that she had to force her husband to build these little homes for these little mystical creatures who live there. And long story short, they're still there. Not the fairies, as far as I know, not the husband or the wife who was a witch, but all these little buildings, and it's very freaky, very cool. But unless you know these places, yeah, we've heard of them. You don't know how to find them unless you know how to find them. It's
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Dudleytown, you go up a certain road and then you got to go through a field to do this, to that. Some places you can just go to. You can go on your own. Stepney Cemetery is a perfect example. The White Lady, the ghost, the witch, the ghost of the White Lady.
Yeah.
But unless you're there with somebody who knows the story, unless you're somebody who's a magnet for this. I mean, Nick is a conduit. So if we go to these places, the spirits, the apparitions, all those seem to come out. And I think if I go there, they can't be bothered. There's some people who attract it. And then there's others, and you're a perfect example from that one example, who may not see it, but they appear in your cameras. I think I'm one of those where if I'll take enough pictures, I'll get amazing stuff. I wish I pre-sent it to you so you could have shared it on the screen. But at that opera house, we took a picture where Nick said to, and I didn't see anything at the time. When it came back, I see two Nosferatu-looking entities walking across. You can see their face, their elbow, and they're in line with each other. And it's one of those wows. And then there's an open door that's just blank. And in 50 shots, it's blank. And then there's one shot where there's a black figure in that picture. So how do you explain these things? How do you explain the two kids? If you're a skeptic, you're going to find a way. Oh, someone was crossing the street and it's a reflection of this, or it's a dust particle that looks like a face. There's more to it. There wouldn't be this many coincidences if there wasn't.
Well, for me, with that picture, I wanted to make sure it wasn't a flash, which I didn't have to flash on. I wanted to make sure it wasn't dust or anything. So what I did was I took 30 to 35 pictures. And that was the only one that came out like that. And I was across the street. Like I said, when I show it to you and I sent you, you're gonna look at it and see what I mean. But I'm like you in a way, because so far I've never been afraid of anything like that. And I think sometimes I'm too eager and I really do want to see something. I don't want to be possessed. I want to meet Casper, the ghost. I don't want to, I want to be something friendly, but I don't want to be thrown against the wall. But I do want to see something. So I spent the night in the Conjuring house last summer. And I wanted to see something so bad. So I would be in the basement where supposedly, because I had Andrea appearing on my show twice. And she's the original daughter who lived there, the movie is based on. Yeah. And she was saying that that's where her father got attacked several times. And that's where supposedly there was a portal. There's a well downstairs. There's a portal to another world. That was what she believed. So I said, all right, 12 o'clock is the witching hour. 3 o'clock is the devil's hour. Yes. From 12 to 3 in the morning, I'm sitting there by the well. I know you're here. Come on, show yourself. I wasn't antagonizing them. I just wanted them to show themselves.
Sure.
Unfortunately, nothing. I went there again another time just for a daytime tour. And I was only in there for say 24 hours and then maybe 4 hours. So it's just those two times. I think sometimes it's the people that are afraid, they know that, and they'll mess with them a little bit more than somebody's like, you know what, I'm not going to bother with this guy. It's boring. They almost know he's too eager. I don't want to mess with him.
That's really great, because I used to say that when we do the ghost tours to England, and they go, well, how come we're not seeing anything? I say, if you're a ghost, are you going to come out with a group of 30 partying tourists? Really? Yeah. No, you're going to come out when that woman is lost and she's walking across the street. But the other thing is, in your life, out of 1 million people, you've probably met 2 or 3 that were really low life or evil or dangerous, right? So out of thousands and thousands of spirits, there's probably only a handful who are that as well.
Yeah.
So that keeps me going, of not being all that afraid, because you would think that most of the spirits are hopefully benevolent and not malevolent is what we got to hope. And if we hit that one, well, goodbye, Charlie,
Another place I went to was in Kentucky called Waverly Hills. It was a hospital at one time for, I can't remember what they had, maybe polio, whatever it was, the big epidemic at the time. But then it turned into a mental institution, mental hospital. So supposedly they said it was haunted, and they had a thing where they slid the bodies down. And so I was able to go down, stay there for 12 midnight to 6 in the morning. It was a tour. So we each got like different floors. I got to spend an hour on one floor, an hour on another one. Same thing. I didn't see anything. I think I wanted too badly to see something. I know other people, oh my God, did you see that? And I'm looking at it, I don't see anything. It moved. Like there was a ball supposedly. And I said, I'm looking at it. I don't see anything moving. But it's just, I think sometimes people imagined it because they wanted something to happen so badly. Maybe they really did see something, but that's another one where I love going on ghost tours. I have a very open mind. And like you, I consider myself a skeptical believer, meaning that I think the reason that a lot of people don't believe in it is because the people that get all the coverage are the ones that lie, that just want to get their name on TV. Then you hear stories about them like, no, this is all BS. I don't believe in any of this. When the people that really do the work, like Nick, they don't really promote themselves or go out of their way to say like, oh, this is me, look at me, I do this. I mean, I know Nicholas has his own thing that he does, but he doesn't go, he promotes himself to do what he does, not to get media attention, to say, oh, I saw a ghost and here's my story, I want everybody to know about this. And I think that unfortunately a lot of people say, oh, this, yeah, sort of like with the same thing with UFOs. I definitely think out of this vast galaxy, we're not the only life forms here, but a lot of people that see UFOs will just lie to get on TV.
Well, if they're going to give me the next ghost hunter type show as the shaman and the showman, you better believe I'm going to make stuff up, brother. I'm going to see a ghost every 10 minutes.
There's a TV show called Ghost Hunters. I can't remember the name of but it is so bad, and everybody I know says the same thing. And I said exactly what you said. I said, if he was accurate about everything, he wouldn't have a show, because he's got to keep it interesting. He has to keep it moving. Something's got to happen. If he goes to all these places, the first time you're going to say, okay, well, you know what, I understand. I love the fact that he's being real about it. Then the second, third, fourth show, all right, this guy's just a bore. Let's move on to somebody's going to see something. That's why you're the showman. I love it.
Right. Richard Felix, who is the host of the BBC's Most Haunted, is our host when we go over to England. He's a London guy, and he wrote a book, if you believe in ghosts. And he says, do I believe in ghosts? No, but I believe in energy, and a house will have an energy. So is there a ghost? Is there that white sheet thing that comes out? No, but there's unexplained things that he bases on energy, and he really is and I think he stopped being on the show because they wanted him to just make up ghost stuff, and he wouldn't.
Yeah, I love that. I respect that. But again, that's when nobody, as they said, well, we really don't need you if you're not going to tell us anything that we want to hear. So as Charles said, make it up. Let's get on to.
I didn't say that. Erase that part.
He was joking. In case you couldn't tell by the way I said it, it was all
exactly.
The shaman sees the ghost.
Book tour. Let's forget about what I said.
No. We all know my viewers are very smart. They understand a joke from reality. But let's talk about what you're most well known for, the Beatles conventions, which I have not had a chance to go. I was going to go to the one you had in Ansonia. Was it last summer? And something happened. I couldn't make it, but I know that I wanted to go to that one so bad, because it's funny. It was Nolan Field, and I performed comedy there. I hosted I performed comedy. I was the MC for some kind of rock. I think it was rock and roll event. I think that's what it's called.
Rock the Valley, something like that.
That's it. Rock the Valley. Rich DiCarlo. I think it's the name.
That's absolutely right. Who's also a ghost. He's a ghost guy too. So the Beatles conventions started when I was a kid. I was still in school, and I heard of the ones in New York, heard the ones in Boston, said, oh, okay, if we can do, I can do one in New Haven. No, I had no idea. And within a few years, I learned what to do, and I started doing it, right out of school, and I was doing it, doing Beatles conventions in Boston, in Seattle, in Miami, in Detroit. I was like the Beatles convention whore, going to all these cities, producing conventions either by myself or for others. And it got to the point where we were drawing, 5,000-6,000 people. The one in Miami was a free admission show. It was in '84 on the 20th anniversary of the Beatles coming to America. We had 50,000 people there. But I was also getting great guests, John Lennon's sister, Cynthia, Pete Best, the Beatles' first drummer, anyone who was anybody. I was meeting in Liverpool when I was bringing the people on the tours, and then I'd bring them back to be guests at my show. So it was all really cylindrical, it was really fun. And I guess when my parents started getting sick, and I was more taking care of them, and I still had to DJ and do all these things, I couldn't juggle everything. So the Beatle conventions kind of went away. And then when my folks passed and I started having, a few kids, I wanted to show them what Daddy did. So in 2009, 2010, I did Rock Con, the weekend of 100 Rock Stars. I did Beatle Expo, 1 day, smaller 2 day shows in Stamford, Connecticut. And then I thought I have to reinvent myself somehow, because people aren't buying bootleg records. They can get it on the internet. They're not sitting in a room watching A Hard Day's Night because they can do it on the internet. The guests were fewer and far between. There wasn't a big deal seeing a Beatles tribute band because you could see one on every town green. You could see one in every club. So I thought, well, what can I do to make it a little fresher, a little different? And I took the focus away from the guests, focus away from the memorabilia and the merch, the focus away from the commercialism. And I said, we're going to get 10 bands to play the show. And it's going to be a festival instead of a convention. We had it outdoors at Ives Concert Park for many years, brought it to the Oakdale for a few years, did it at Nolan Field, like you said. And it's more of a, a freebie, hippie-ish, people are on the lawn, fun, and 10 bands, all different. No band can repeat the same song. So the last band is the Beatles clone band, but before that, it might be a McCartney tribute band. The band before that might just be doing their Cavern Club early stuff. Another one might be just doing their rare tracks. Another one might be emulating the scenes from Get Back from the Rooftop. So yeah, that was how it has morphed into. I'm not sure if I'm going to do one this year. I think I want to maybe make it an every other year event, unless I find a different kind of venue for it. But conventions, I made a great big mark, and I've been so proud, because besides Beatle guests, we had some of the Monkees at those shows. We had Tommy Rowe, Richie Havens, some amazing people through the years, just by association, came to those conventions and were guests. And those were in the days where they would sit and sign autographs for hours, not get paid a penny. It was before there were celebrity shows. And it was just really, really magical.
You met all the Beatles, is that correct?
Not John Lennon.
Not John. No. Okay, so John, I'd be with Ringo, Paul, and George. Who is the most friendly? To me, I'm just going by what I can see on TV and interviews. It seems like Paul is probably the most friendly out of the three of them.
Yeah. So I was closer to Linda.
Okay.
And Paul and Linda were, married at the time, and I'd always see her and she'd go, "Oh, Charles, yes, Connecticut. I'm Scarsdale. Yep, I'm not far from you. We grew up together." That kind of thing. And when Paul McCartney, when I first met him, it was, I think, 89, and it was in Birmingham, England. And it was it was right before the concert. And the guy who took me there was Sam Leach, who was a Beatles promoter who did the early Beatles stuff before they played the Cavern even. And he was friends with Paul. And he said, if I ever bring him over to a convention, Sam Leach, as a guest, he'll introduce me to Paul if Paul ever tours. Okay, Paul's never going to tour. In those days, Wings Over the World and Wings Across America, that was it. He hadn't toured in so many years. He got busted in Tokyo, and that was it. We never thought he would. So brought Sam Leach over. He was a guest at my shows. We became friends. He put out books. I knew his family. That was really good, as I became very close friends with a lot of the people who were people in the Beatles history. And Paul said he would introduce me, and sure enough, Paul's finally touring. We don't know if he's coming to America. We don't know if it's England. We don't know what, but he's doing a set of dates, and the closest date to Liverpool is in Birmingham. And it was at the NES, which is a big, I guess, soccer stadium. I don't even know what it was. And I'm backstage. I'm in the green room with Sam Leach and his daughter, Sammy. And we're waiting, and the show's 8:00, and it's 8:15. And all right. Well, it was close. We came close. And the door opens up, and McCartney walks in. And there was a pre-show, so he didn't really have to go on till 8:30. And he's walking through the crowd in the green room, and it's Vera, Chuck, and Dave, it's all his family, because it's the closest to Liverpool. And he's hugging them and he's kissing them. And we're at the back of the room and we're last. And I'm like, it's never going to come to us. And he comes to us. And Sam, who's this? And this is my daughter, Sammy. He picks her up, he kisses her. Sammy, look, she's so good looking. How did she come from you? He's making jokes and he's cracking jokes. And who's this lad? Meaning me. You know, I'm a lad. I'm a young guy at the time. And Sam goes, this is Charles Rosenay. He publishes a magazine called Good Day Sunshine. Paul goes, oh, good title, that. He goes, he produces Beatles conventions in America. Paul goes, and then he goes, and he also does Beatles tours. He brings Beatles fans to him from America to Liverpool. He goes, when do I get my royalties? So I went from this hilarious frozen creature to this melted blob. He was so nice, so friendly, so wonderful, took tons of pictures. You know, he would have talked to Sam and Sammy and us forever, but he had to get, we were last, and it was probably 8:28 and they're pulling at him. And we met a bunch of times afterwards. There's a video of me dancing with him, as you mentioned, at a restaurant when we had dinner together in London. I got to meet him more than anybody else, and he was always wonderful, and Linda was always special. I didn't meet John, but I met Julian, his son, and Julian was really sweet. Ringo at press conferences a bunch of times. George Harrison in Japan at that time when we all came over. And John, we came real close in 1980 at the second or third Beatles convention I'd ever done. It was in October before he passed, before we lost John. We did a convention right on the date of his birthday, and we did what we thought would be the largest birthday card, world's largest birthday card. We submitted it to Guinness Book of World Records, and they rejected it because it was on a blanket, a sheet. And they said, it's not a card, it doesn't qualify. But hundreds and hundreds of people wrote, you know, happy birthday to it. So we arranged that we would bring it and John would receive it at the Dakota. And a Rolling Stone magazine met me there with Dean Falcone, my friend, the musician, Mike Strito, a drummer in a Beatles band. And we went down with my mom. My dad stayed in the car. We came out and we went to the Dakota, and Yoko sent someone down to get it. And he said, yeah, no, they're not here. They're in Florida. But I think they just couldn't be bothered when they saw, you know, a group of fans coming, and so he took it. I never got a thank you. I never heard if it was given to him. I don't know whatever happened to it, but that was the closest I came to John Lennon. And I don't think I've ever told that story on the air. So thank you for letting me do that.
Oh, thank you very much. A Claus Corner exclusive. I appreciate that. So have you ever met Yoko?
I did, yeah. And interestingly enough, it was in New Haven at the Schubert Theater, where there was a John Lennon art exhibit. And she was frazzled. I was working at that nightclub at the time, and I was an ambassador. You know, I was there to do whatever needed to be done. And Sean, her son, was there. He was a young guy, right? And she had to go on stage and do presentation and all that. And I said, I'll keep him company. Don't worry about it. So I babysat Sean Lennon, and I had copies of my magazine, Good Day Sunshine, with me. One of them had Yoko on the cover. So he's looking at the magazines. He said, oh, look at this. My mom's in this. And he was really cool. He was really sweet. So that was my Yoko encounter, and my claim to fame was babysitting Sean. That's my Lennon sixth degree of separation. And Yoko and I exchanged Christmas cards forever through while I published Good Day Sunshine. Until she found reasons to do cease and desist with me, but that's another. So
that's going to be on part 2. I want to hear that one. Did you see the documentary done by Peter Jackson about the Let It Be recordings?
No, I never heard of it. What is it about?
It's on.
I'm kidding. Of course.
I can't believe it. Just 10 minutes ago, I'm saying my audience is smart. They get the jokes. The only one who doesn't get the jokes is the host.
You know what? I watched it with my 15 and 16-year-old, and I thought they would be bored. And when it was over, we all gave it, we rate everything we see. We gave it a 10, and we said, God, we want to see 8 more hours. I loved it so much. And I say, thank God I'm alive to have seen it, because I know so many people who are bigger Beatle fans than I am, and bigger Beatle collectors and completists who are not on this planet anymore. And that was the sad part of it, that it took so long to come out. But thank you, Peter Jackson, for doing it. Thank you, Michael Lindsay Hoggs, for having 800 cameras and having them in flower pots and everywhere to capture, that is the ultimate reality TV, and just such an amazing depiction of the greatest band of all time.
Definitely. What I loved was the part I remember right now was when Paul and George are going back. No, I want to play it like this. No, play it like this. No, I don't like that. Just I love the fact, like watching them, the four of them get to Ringo just seemed, the parts I saw anyway, because I didn't watch all of it yet. Yeah, he just seemed like he was his own little world. It's like, okay, you guys, when you're done talking, I'm ready to play. Yoko, she seemed like she wanted to fall asleep at any time, but it was so great. The only thing I wish they had was maybe closed captioning or subtitles at the bottom, because I couldn't understand everything they were saying because of the dialect and
the thick Scouse accents.
Yeah. So just a couple of things I had to rewind, and I'm so glad for rewind. I'm like, what did he just say? What were they talking about? So, but I enjoyed it. You know what I enjoyed even more than that? On Hulu, Rick Rubin, the great producer, has a one-on-one. I think it's 4 to 5 specials with Paul McCartney.
So in depth, so good, yeah.
And it was so, one thing I never even thought of at the time, and Paul said, we used to make our songs simple because we didn't have anything to record them on, and I had to remember them. And I never thought about that. It's like, how did they remember their songs? It's amazing how he would play, I wrote this song when I was 13 years old, and he would just go off and start playing it. I loved that one as well. So any Beatles, even non-Beatles fans, you have to watch it. Like, the perfect example of that was, hey, do you have any salt and pepper? What? Any salt and pepper? Sergeant Pepper? And then that's where you got the name Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. It's funny, and knowing the history behind the music.
Yeah.
And it's great. I think you called one of your conventions, or maybe all of them, the Magical History Tour, which I love that.
No, so that's actually what I call our trips to Liverpool. The Magical History Tour. Yeah. That's what we call those. Yeah.
When you do the history tour, where do you go? Like all different, like we'll say where Paul grew up, John grew up, the clubs they played.
Absolutely, everything. It's exhaustive. We do 3 days in London. So we do Abbey Road, we cross Abbey Road, we do Paul's Cavendish, all his homes, all the London sightseeing places that are musts. And then we go to Henley, which is on the way to Liverpool, and that's where George Harrison lived. And then we get to Liverpool, and you'd think, okay, well, there's got to be a million more things to do in London, right? No, London is just the appetizer. It's just, the warm up. Liverpool, we spend a whole week. And we could probably spend another week because there's so many places where they met, where they recorded, where they went to school, where they grew up, where they were born, where they, had girlfriends and boyfriends, where they recorded this, you talk about going to Strawberry Field or Penny Lane or Abbey Road. It's the things you've seen in postcards, read about in books, seen in movies, come to life. It's 3D. You're actually living it, not unlike going to Dracula's castle. For people who can relate to that, for the people who are Beatle fans, this is going to the Holy Land. I remember one year, we got to Liverpool and a guy kisses the ground. He's like, he's crying. This is what all my life, I cut out articles and couldn't wait to come here.
I definitely want to check. There's so many of your trips I haven't been on yet, which I do want to go eventually, and hopefully sooner than later. Yeah, well, I did get a chance to go. There was a documentary that came out several years ago called "Echo in the Canyon" about Laurel Canyon. It was Jacob Dylan was the narrator of it. So luckily, I'm so glad I saw this right before I went to California. So I said, you know what? There's got to be a tour for Laurel Canyon, because in there they talk about the Beatles, Beach Boys, Mamas and the Papas, all these. So when I went to Laurel Canyon, I was able to see George Martin's house, John Lennon's house, all different. And I love the story. One story I love in particular was there was a competition between all of them, but there's really no ego. They would just grab their guitar, go to a party. Oh yeah, I've been playing this. What do you think of this song? And all right, well, I got this. What do you think of this? And they inspired each other instead of in competition. And Brian Wilson loved Rubber Soul so much. He said, I got to come up with something better. That's when he made Pet Sounds. John and Paul heard that and said, I got to do something even better. Sgt. Pepper's. So I love the fact that, I'm sure there's egos involved.
The Stones heard that and had to do On Her Majesty's Secret, whatever, their album. They did not, they weren't jealous. They weren't competitive.
No, it's great.
The record companies may have been,
Yeah.
Management may have, they might have thought everyone, the Beatles versus the Dave Clark Five. Really? They might have thought that these were competitors, but no, I mean, they would come to each other's houses. They would come to each other. The Monkees went to London and the Beatles hosted them for a party. It was always that, it was always camaraderie.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what the whole documentary that I saw talked about. They said nobody really cared. And it was funny because Eric Clapton said, yeah, maybe I borrowed a little too much from this. And they played one of his songs, and one of the songs that he supposedly was influenced by. And like, yeah, all right, I really did rip that song off. But it's just that he was laughing about it. He had and then Crosby, Stills, and Nash lived in that area. That whole scene, I love the 60s music scene, and I love all the bands that they had back then. And you know what I love about back then too? Back then they let bands evolve on their own, like the Beatles from Love Me Do to Sgt. Pepper's. Now they would have been canceled a long time ago by written, oh yeah, you don't sound like, you're not the same as you used to be. And then they get like 4 guys with mop tops that look like them, sound like them, dance like them. They don't give music a chance anymore. It's just whatever's popular at that moment. And then, all right, let's get rid of them and let's get 10 more people that sound, look, and act alike. So I'm so glad at that time, and they should learn from the past. Bands like Rolling Stones, Crosby, Stills, and Nash, Beatles, Beach Boys, they were able to evolve and become the 20-year overnight success and become, learn from their life experiences and come out with better songs.
It's true. Now it's just disposable, and it's just it sounds more than it's songs. It's
exactly. Yeah. Well, I have one question for you, and I always hear this, so I want to get it because I know you've met these people and you know all the stories. What is the real reason Pete Best was kicked out of the Beatles?
There's no way to answer that. You can only speculate. I've interviewed Pete so many times, and we asked that same question. You can only speculate. Was he a worse drummer than Ringo? Could he have gotten to do the things Ringo did? There's no way to quantify that. I think that they, 4 guys want to gel. They want to hang out with each other. They want to be goofy. Maybe Ringo was more goofy. Maybe they needed a foil as opposed to a matinee idol. Maybe Pete got more tail than Paul, and it bothered him. There's so many speculations as to why, and they stuck by the fact that Ringo was a better drummer. Well, history has proven that Ringo was a brilliant drummer. And, even the drummers that say, well, it was so simplistic, if you listen to it and you analyze it, it wasn't simplistic. And no one was a better, beat keeper than Ringo. His timing was just impeccable. And so history proved that they got it right. But history also gave, Pete Best his fair uppance when the anthology came out, because some of the songs that they did with him on it finally appeared on legal releases, and he got, a nice royalty check from that. And you know what? He's alive, and he's got a beautiful family and daughters and grandchildren. And the Casbah is still a place that people can go and party there with Pete. And his family built a museum in Liverpool that's not just the best museum for Beatles. It is the best museum I've ever gone to in my life in the world. So, there's a lot to be said for his contribution to the fandom. And he could have been Jimmy Nicol. Jimmy Nicol was a guy who filled in for Ringo on one tour for a short time, got so despondent that he disappeared. He has cut himself off. No one in the world knows where Jimmy Nicol is. Pete Best claimed that he, got close to suicidal in his book, Beatle, the Pete Best story. And, you could imagine that, because he was probably at the time the unluckiest man in the world. I'd like to think that in the 80s, when we brought him over to conventions and he saw how much the fans loved him, and the fans saw him in a different light, that it wasn't sour grapes, that there was, that he was, I wish I knew, he was so humble and so sweet. People loved Pete Best from going to the conventions and putting himself out there in public and doing so many interviews, going on Howard Stern and being, and being the foil and letting himself, be ribbed, which of you guys was the most well hung, and he played along with that. He was a great sport. So, there's a lot. I love Pete Best, and he's been great to me, coming to conventions. In my top 10 horror lists, there's a list from Pete Best. He gave a great list, in fact. So I can say nothing bad about Pete, but I can't say with absolute reason why he was dismissed from the Beatles.
Glad that he's no longer. I'm glad he's no longer bitter, and I'm also glad that he was able to get his comeuppance. Where, as you said, when the anthology came out, he was able to get some money from that, and people do know. So yes, he was part of the Beatles, and he didn't get a chance to experience, the Ed Sullivan Show and everything else that went on in Shea Stadium and all the good stuff. But
there's still something. My wish is that Ringo would tour and have the Pete Best band open for
that would be great. You should promote it. You're the one who should produce that show.
I've tried. It was shot right down. Ringo would never, because it might get more publicity from the other end. No, Ringo would never. And Ringo doesn't have to. It would be all for Pete's benefit, not for Ringo's. But it would be nice to see Ringo and Pete together, or Pete and Paul together, or the three of them together, just hugging and saying, I'm sorry, and I wish, that kind of thing. That would have been
Ringo's. If I was at Ringo's level, I would say, people know who I am. People know I was part of the Beatles. Let's just have some fun. I don't really need to prove myself anymore. So I could care less. I would love to help. If I were him, I would love to help Pete out and say, come on, let's have some fun. And it's funny because speaking of Howard Stern, years ago, Paul McCartney was on Howard Stern, and they were talking about how Ringo refuses to sign any autographs. He goes, I don't know what his problem is. Paul was making a joke about it. He goes, oh, peace and love, peace and love. He's making fun of him. He goes, I love meeting people. I love talking. That's why I asked you that question, because the way he was making it sound is Ringo sort of doesn't really want anything to do with the fans anymore. Meaning and I could almost understand that in a way, but I don't know. I love people and I love talking to people. So I would be more like Paul McCartney. You came to see me. I wouldn't have a career without you. Come on, let's have some fun. And somebody asked me a question, and I answered it like this. I said, best musician and best entertainer. I can't remember who I said for musician at the time, but for me, entertainer was Paul McCartney, because maybe he's not technically the best bass player, but he writes great songs. And I have a concert where he played in Russia. I'm not sure how long it was. Maybe it was like 10, 15 years ago. He's still singing the same songs, having so much fun. The crowd's singing along with him. He's dancing. It's almost like he's playing it for the first time. I said, this guy is great. And even his last album, it wasn't the best album in the world, but after all these years, it was still good, and I enjoyed it. He's still coming out with good music.
Amazing, right? And you would never think, when they were interviewed in 63 or 64, how long are you going to be famous? Well, we don't know when the bubble's going to pop. But hopefully, have a few more hits. Who would have ever thought that he would be on a level of, Leonard Bernstein or Rodgers and Hammerstein or Bach or Beethoven, or of the greatest composers, musicians, and performers of all time?
I love what he said too. He mentioned that every time they came out with a new album, he would listen to the album before, because he wanted to do the exact opposite. He never wanted to repeat himself. And it's amazing. And I did not realize how much George Martin was a part of that band. Like the things, watching these different interviews with Rick Rubin and the other one, where like George Martin said, no, you did piano in this, let's try this. Or you did guitar in this, let's try this. And I love the fact that he made some of the best Beatles songs just by saying, let's try this. Let's see how that works out. And he really was the fifth Beatle.
Absolutely. But I didn't love in Get Back is the one scene where John just snipes at George Martin, and just, really, we're talking, get out of here kind of. I don't know if you remember that scene. That hurt me. I don't know why. I thought, wow, really, to George Martin? This is the man who, who should be getting most respect. He's your fifth Beatle, but exactly, and then Billy Preston. And that changes everything. They are now a band. They are now rocking. Yeah, but that's what comes to mind, though, with the George Martin, that we always pictured. He's this reverential, getting respect. He's the man, he puts in his advice on how to do a harpsichord, and it's in there. And then all of a sudden, Paul and John are talking, and George is there, and they excuse him. And I'm like, wow, you learn so much from that movie.
Yeah, I didn't watch all of that, so I don't remember that part, but I got to check it out. No, I'm glad but yeah, that would upset me too, because as we just talked about, it's he did so much for that band and he helped them in so many ways, and for them to dismiss him so much like that, the way you described it, yeah, that's not right. But anyway, they're best to me, the best band in the world, and no one will ever top them. I love pretty much every song they've ever written, and I can never get bored with them. That's one band I can listen to no matter what day, what time, over and over again, and yeah, let's listen to it again. I just love their songs, and it always makes me want to stand up and shout.
Are you and I the same person? And I never realized this. This is like, let's switch. I'll do the interview because you'll answer the same questions, and we have the same loves of the same thing. It's unbelievable.
That's why we've been friends since 2005. We have a lot in common.
So true.
That was a perfect segue, because what I was going to talk to you next was how you do interviews. You've interviewed some amazing guests. Who are some of the biggest?
The first one that I realized that I could interview a guest was Richie Havens, because it was early 80s. And we got a last minute call. Richie Havens is in Connecticut. He's got a tribute album coming out with the Beatles. He wants to come to the convention. I'm like, okay, Richie Havens, Woodstock legend, bring him over. And I was producing the convention, a few days to go. I didn't have time to research. I knew he was in Woodstock. I knew a few songs, and he was on the stage, and I asked him questions for 40 minutes. And then I said, you have a guitar behind you. Is there a reason that guitar's with you? He goes, well, yeah, would you let me play it? And I said, I think we're out of time. Sorry, Richie. Oh, just kidding.
Maybe next time. I
realized that I could tease the person that I'm interviewing. And it came up years later. I was interviewing John Lennon's sister on stage. And it was the first time I had met her. And we were on stage, and we were in the front of the stage, and we were standing. For some reason, we didn't have the stools. We were doing a stand-up. And she's talking about how much she loves the Stones. And I'm rolling my eyes. And then she talks about how some Beatle fans get carried away. They have to have every record. And as she's saying it, I'm like slinking into the background because she's describing me. I am that fan that has to have every record, that knows the words, everything. And she turned around and she goes, oh, wait, I'm not trying to insult anyone. It was just hysterical. It was hysterical. So I think that in doing stuff, I always try to be funny. I always try to be humorous. And if they say something early in the interview, I'll try to remember, and Johnny Carson, I'll try to remember it and bring it back later on in the interview. I don't always succeed with that. And now more than ever, there's so much stuff that I want to say that's either risque or might be pushing the envelope, and I don't anymore. And that drives me crazy. It's not worth it.
We are the same person, because I have, as you know, I did stand-up comedy, and I don't know if I would do the same jokes I did just 4 or 5 years ago, because I don't want to be canceled. I want to keep my job, and the things are, what I say isn't really that bad, but one person goes on Twitter and says, oh my God, that Rich Sayre, that Charles Rosenay, I'm so offended. That's going to get out, and then we're going to be canceled. We do things with the public, and we can't afford to lose what we have, which stinks. I don't want to be like that.
It was one Beatles convention we did. It was in Stamford, and my guests were May Pang, Joey Molland from Badfinger, Cynthia Lennon when she was still alive, Angie McCartney, Paul's stepmom, and we're all on stage. And I'm interviewing, and I'm jumping around with the mic, and I'm bringing them all out, and I go, and now, ladies and gentlemen, Yoko Ono, and the whole crowd stands up and looks. I go, sit down, shut up, come on, really? But I looked at my guests.
I love it.
Cynthia had a bouquet in her lap. She was ready to present it. May Pang was like, each one of them had a different expression. They believed me too. And I pulled the same shtick in 2013 at the Davy Jones Memorial Monkeys Convention. It flashed back, and I had Peter on stage and I had Mickey on stage, and they were my regular guests. We had David Cassidy, a lot of great guests. And I did the same. Ladies and gentlemen, Mike Nesmith. and the crowd is, you hear screaming, you hear crying. I go, sit down. I'm just kidding. Shut up. And people were like booing. And I come on, it was a joke. So in a few years, people's, people got a little more sensitive. Even in 2013, some of them were like, it wasn't the right thing to do. So, I'll still do that one because that was, I thought that was a classic. But I try to inject humor in everything I do. I try to make the guest who I'm interviewing feel like they're my friend. I try hard to do that, and I usually succeed. And I don't over research because I want to ask the questions. Larry King used to say, I never research because I want to ask the questions my listeners, which was a lie because the producers would have all the questions for him. But exactly. I do sincerely try to do that. And I have a weekend show on the internet called the Monkeys Interview Show. There's something called Monkey Mania Radio, and it's on Live 365. And I've been, during the pandemic, I knew that the station was launching this September. I knew I had a shift. So I pre-recorded like 40 interviews with anyone who had anything to do with the Monkeys, whether they toured with them, whether they recorded with them, Monkeys themselves, if someone was a roadie for anything to do with the Monkeys. But also, like this past weekend, I had Uncle Floyd, who was a TV guy who the Monkeys were on a bunch of times, and Butch Patrick, Eddie Munster, because he was on the Monkeys. He was on an episode. So there's all those tie-ins. And that's been a real pleasure, just having fun with the folks. And when you're like your show, you don't know if there's 100 people listening or 5 billion people listening. The fact is, we're putting out shows. Hopefully in posterity, in the future, people will look back and enjoy it, not just when it's aired, but in the future. And hopefully we're doing something that's more of a time capsule of all time. But we're not that important. None of us are really that important. So let's have fun with it. And that's what I always think. If I'm not having fun doing what I'm doing, I shouldn't be doing it. And I've been very blessed. This might be our closer here. I'm very blessed that all the stuff I've done has brought me pleasure, but more importantly, has brought other people pleasure. And just right down the line, whether it's the conventions, publishing a magazine, putting out a book, DJing at weddings and bar mitzvahs, in clubs, just literally everything I've done has been to entertain. Thank God I want to say I'm good at it, but I've been lucky and blessed that I hit the right chords with those.
I will definitely say it for you then, because you're modest. Everything I've seen you do, you're great at. You're great at entertaining the crowd. You're great in the movies that I've seen you in. You're great at promoting. You're the showman. So I will say it for you. I've gone to many of your different events, seen you in different movies. Whatever you do, you put 1,000% into, and people can see that, and they appreciate it. And for me, I want to say one of the greatest compliments for this show is when a guest says to me afterwards, like an email or even on the show, they'll say, Rich, you made me feel so comfortable. I was nervous at first, and it was more like a conversation with an old friend. I love the fact. And for me, I actually do like to do research only because I like to know as much as I can, because then it makes the interview a little bit more. And what you said earlier, you're like, Rich, you did more research than any of the other shows.
Surprised me with so much stuff. That was amazing.
Because remember, I interviewed Ted Neely from Jesus Christ Superstar, and he said in the middle of the interview, he stopped. He goes, I got to say, wow, I'm impressed. And Dee Wallace from ET, she goes, Rich, I've done 1,000 interviews. I never had anybody do this much research. I want to thank you. She goes, for somebody who does interviews all the time, we thank you. So I love the fact that, just like with you, when people say, Rich, something, I thought we were talking for 20 minutes, ended up being over 2 hours, and they don't even realize it.
We've been talking 2 hours.
See,
Wow.
It's just, I hit record and I start talking, but so to me, just like you, I love to entertain people, but I just love making the guests feel comfortable. And instead of having an interview, it starts off with some questions, but most of the time it's just, I'm feeding off of what you say, and we go back and forth. And I love doing shows like this, and I love talking to people.
Well, you are great at it. I must tell you, this was the best interview I did today. It really, by far, and
And I know you must have done at least 10, 15 interviews before my show, right?
I had to, I had to be a little funny and do that twist, but no, dude, I mean, we are friends, so I know it's going to come across as that, but I appreciate the fact that you did that research and you even brought things that I've forgotten, and that's amazing, you know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're almost done. I appreciate that. I want to talk about the time you shared the stage with Geraldo Rivera, Charles Grodin, and the amazing Kreskin.
It was the Beatles' 50th anniversary. I put on a series of shows in New York at the Apollo Theater, at Town Hall. We had 4 venues, and each night was a different theme. One was the R&B Motown soul acts, you know, tribute to the Beatles. One was, you know, rock and rollers. One was tribute bands. Anyway, and so along with getting all these great performers to perform, you know, Al Jardine from the Beach Boys, Mary Wilson from the Supremes, on and on. Gary U.S. Bond, just Tommy James, the guys from the Rascals. Oh, so amazing people came out to play for me. I reached out to people who I thought, well, I don't need to be the MC the whole night. You know, if I've got 25 acts, I'd like to get some celebrities. So Geraldo Rivera said yes. Danny Aiello came out. The amazing Kreskin, who
hilarious.
Don't tell anybody, but he might be a special guest at this year's paranormal convention. Shh, don't tell anybody. Okay. Yeah, Charles Grodin. Who was the sports guy? We had a Berman. I forgot his name.
Len, right? Is it Len Berman?
Len Berman came, and they're all Beatle fans. And they said, sure, we'll bring out guests, we'll bring out acts. And Charles Grodin was the best, because each act was supposed to stick to 2 songs. They would perform their hit and a Beatles song. Ron Dante did Sugar Sugar, and he did Get Back. So you understand the format. One guy, Larry Kerwin, was in a group called Block 47. I brought him in because he was in a play called Liverpool Fantasy, big Beatle fan, Irish punk rocker. And he said, how's about I do something different? I do some poetry first. Okay, I thought poetry is 1 page. We were going on about 9 minutes with this poetry. And I'm freaking out. I'm freaking out because I got, 17 more acts coming up. I got to be out of the theater. Charles Grodin just walks up to him and he looks at him and he just stands there with that Charles Grodin face.
I knew it well.
The only other person who could do that the same way is Funkheimer. What's his name?
Yeah. Oh my God. He was on Curb Your Enthusiasm last. He's Albert Brooks's brother.
Super Dave, Bob Einstein.
Super Dave Osborne, Bob Einstein. Yes.
Yeah.
He was hilarious.
Do that face. Yes. And Charles just went out there and the crowd went crazy, applauded for him. And he didn't say a word. He just looked at him. And then when the guy looked at him, he just went like this to his watch. Charles Grodin was great. So that's pretty special, and then I took backstage pictures with all those guys, arm around like I've known them forever. Sometimes you make your own opportunities. So in those cases, the Beatles 50th anniversary, we put on those shows and we were able to get a lot of really big names be part of it. To see Tommy James do a duet with Gene Cornish from the Rascals. There was a lot of that type of stuff. At the end of the Apollo show, it was Leslie Uggams, Betty Levette, Leslie Uggams, Gary U.S. Bonds, Lloyd Price, Lulu, all on stage singing "All You Need Is Love." It was just unbelievable, magical moments, and so many of them. Wow.
Speaking, I want to talk about one more person. As I mentioned about 2.5 hours ago, I said I meet a lot of people. You're actually friends with these people. One I met, great guy, Gary DiCarlo, and I know you have a history with him. I met him at Chiller Theater, and he wrote the song "Na Na Na Na, Hey Hey Hey, Goodbye." Yeah. I had a chance. He was singing in the middle of the lobby, so I got up, started dancing with him, singing with him. He had the whole lobby singing the song. We went on for 10 minutes. He was such a great guy, and I'm bringing him up for a reason. Oh, do you?
Yeah, I have his obituary behind me.
Yeah, he died, was it 2-3 years ago? It wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, 3-4 years ago. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. But he was such a nice guy. And I know the reason I bring him up is because you have a history with him. Yeah. And I know you had him at one of your shows. And tell my viewers what you did at the festival where after he sang his song, you gave everybody something. Yeah.
Three things. First of all, I brought him to a Beatles convention and he said, "You can't bring me to a Beatles convention." I go, "Why not?" He goes, "Because my song knocked the Beatles out of the #1 spot." I go, well, "That's exactly why you will be there." He goes, "The people will hate me." I go, "No, they will love you. You'll see." And it was the first convention he ever did. At the same time, what you don't know is that I was fighting a legal battle for him because he did not get any royalties for Na Na Hey Hey Kissing Goodbye. Now, not only did he co-write it, but he was the lead singer.
Yeah.
So I introduced him to Royalty Tracking, which is a company that does exactly what he needed. And his first paycheck, which was his first royalty check in 40 years, was 6 figures. And I was proud to be the person who made sure that he got his royalties that were due all those years. So
How
yeah,
did you not get it though? Why? I mean, lead singer
he
co-wrote it.
wasn't credited on the label.
Oh.
The other singer, the other writer, Vic Steffens, was. And as the singer, he was a paid for hire. And then they sent out bands called Steam. And if you look at the cover of the album, he's not on the album. It's just these 5 long-haired, freaky guys, and they were Steam. So it was in the years that the record companies did a lot of that really nefarious stuff. But he got what was due him finally. And he was one of my guests at the show we talked about where I said Ron Dante did a song. So he would do a Beatles song and he would do Na Na Hey Hey Kissing Goodbye. Well, the night before I had a group do Hey Jude. And when they finished Hey Jude, they threw out hundreds of placards that said na 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 na. No, it said hey na, the Hey Jude na na.
Yeah.
So it was na na's from Hey Jude, right? Na 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 na. So the whole crowd's got nas and A's. Well, they threw them on the ground. I collected them, knowing that I was going to see Gary the next night on my stage. So I gave, before he came out, I handed out these nas to everyone in the first 20, 30 rows. And I said, don't put this out till Gary sings. And I'm going through the aisles telling these people. So he's on there, he's on stage, he sings his Beatles song. Then he starts, whenever I'm near you, na 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 na, and the crowd's hands go up and he sees na-nas, nothing but na-nas through the crowd. I get chills just being in his place at the time, how wonderful that would have been with him. And he collected a bunch of them. He used to sign them if he had extras, nanas, and that became kind of a staple. But yeah, then he did Chiller. He did a bunch of those shows because he was just you and me. He was, Shelton, Connecticut, local guy. And to have had that rebirth so many years later in life, he was so proud of it. We lost him, unfortunately, to cancer, and he was a close friend. Yeah.
Glad I had a chance to meet him, sing with him, and just talk to him for the longest time. He was, as you mentioned, down to earth. He would talk to you forever. He didn't care who it was. He'd be like, "Oh yeah, I'll be right with you in a minute." It's like, no, talk as long as you want. And he just was so happy to be there, so grateful. And I loved it. And I love that song. And I'm so glad that you are the one to help him get what he deserved.
Yeah, that's another one of those honors that I forget about. And when I say honors, I was honored to do it. Not that I deserved an honor, but I was honored and blessed and proud to be, the one who helped with that. Yeah.
Charles, it was great having you on the show. Please come back anytime. I know you're always busy. Actually, I want you, the shaman and the showman. I want to have the two of you on there. We'll talk all about the Connecticut Paracon. We'll talk about your other tours. I'd love to have you both on.
Okay, when's your next show? No, I'm just kidding. Whenever
you're say, give me 10 minutes. I'm going to get something neat really quick. I'll be right back.
Yeah, give me a chance to get my voice back. Shaman and the Showman, we'd be honored. I got to tell you, all kidding aside, I've done probably 300 or so interviews since the book came out. You're probably around my 260th favorite. I really love tonight so much. Thank you for having me. www.bookoftop10horrorlist.com. I almost forgot to do a plug. You've got me so many stories and so much fun here. If people want to come on the Dracula tour, www.dractours.com, and the Beatles tours, www.liverpooltours.com.
Take a breath, and let me do the rest for you, because I've been to many of your conventions. I've been to many of your promotions, seen you in movies. Whatever Charles does, he does it great. You always have a good time. As he said, no, he's never gotten a bad review for anything he's done, and there's a reason why. Everything he does, he's great. I'm so glad that I made the top 260 in your interviews. I really do appreciate that.
Well, see, I can say that to you. We have a mutual admiration society going, because I respected your comedy, your appearances on stage. Every time you're at a convention, I mean, when you were at the Paracon, I had a shout out to you, right? The second I saw you from the stage.
It was funny. Well, I got to tell you about. Let me tell my viewers what happened. I walk in there. Oh, it's her. Rich Sears. Her. God. I just started looking at the ceiling because all I heard was my voice resonate throughout the whole auditorium. I loved it. No, Charles, you have a great sense of humor, and so do I. So yeah, I love the fact that we can joke around, and you said it perfectly. You have to make things entertaining. You can't always be so serious. Unfortunately, now we have to be a little bit more careful in this PC world, because somebody's out there going to complain, and then they'll take me off of YouTube or take me off of Facebook for whatever reason. I hate that, and I hate having to be careful, because what we do is there's never any maliciousness behind it. We're just having a good time. We're just having fun. We're not trying to hurt anybody, and then somebody that doesn't even know us or follow what we do is going to complain about us, and they're going to cancel us because of one Twitter remark. So yeah, I hate where we're going, but you and I are never going to stop what we do and what we love, and I appreciate that. I'm definitely going to have you back on. Thank you once again, Charles.
Thank you so much.
Right. That wraps up the latest episode of the Claus Corner. A huge thanks goes out to entertainer, author, humorist, actor, music aficionado, and promoter, Mr. Charles Rosenay, ! I would also like to thank you, the viewer, for tuning in every week. Enjoy your day, everyone.
Now available in one collection. Confessions of a Frenetic Mind. 5 tales of blood-curdling terror. Available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble.